Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan AGAJANIan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are musician Bernie Fields and filmmaker Micki Dickoff. Harmonica virtuoso Bernie Fields was born and raised in Montreal, Canada. He studied general science at McGill University, and he's been featured as a soloist with symphonies around the world, including Montreal Symphony Orchestra in Canada, the Hanover Symphony Orchestra in Germany, and in America, Dallas Symphony and Orange County Symphony. You've heard his work on film, TV soundtracks. You probably have never known that there's this harmonica virtuoso, Bernie Fields, playing all over. Bernie.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me.
From general science to the harmonica. Was there a stop in between?
I used to play clarinet in high school.
Oh, you did?
I did. And I attended a concert that featured Larry Adler in Montreal, Canada. And I just got hooked on the sound and the instrument.
Was he the only one playing at that time?
At that time, yes. There was Larry Adler and also John Sebastian.
What kind of work were they doing?
Larry Adler was doing classical concerts.
Oh, they were classical?
Yes, and he had quite a few pieces that were commissioned to him by Vaughan Williams, Benjamin Britten, and so forth.
Oh, so he was doing operas,
Featured soloists with symphonies, yeah.
I see. When you picked up the harmonica, did you think of it as an instrument like your clarinet?
Yes, I did. That when I was exposed to it by Larry Adler, I thought it's just amazing what he can do with it. He was playing classical. In fact, the first thing I heard him do was Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin.
That's what's so amazing to me. How many little holes are there?
Okay. There are 12 holes. This is a chromatic.
Tell me what it is. Yeah.
This is a chromatic harmonica. It's 3 octaves, very similar to a flute in range. And there are 2 plates. The top plate is diatonic, which is, I would say, the white keys of the piano. The bottom is the black keys. When I press the lever, it gives the black key.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And then how do you blow into it?
I blow and draw.
Oh, draw too. And how do you know where the notes are? Is there music written for it?
There is music. Like I said, Benjamin Britten wrote. It's like flute music, very similar, or violin music.
So you read the notes?
Yes, I
do. And you have the notes on there?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was wondering. If you're with a symphony orchestra, is there a part written for you, or does somebody?
No, there's a part written for me. For harmonica solo. Yeah.
And when you're working with a symphony orchestra, of course, if it's written for you, you have to rehearse. You go through the same process as everybody else?
Yes, I do, yeah.
And then you work with the conductor separately, or?
We meet, say, a month before the concert, decide on the material, and I have to do a lot of transposing for the instrument because certain keys sound, good, certain keys sound bad.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. So that's where you rewrite it?
I rewrite it and put in certain effects and so forth.
So who calls you? Are there a lot of people who do the same thing that you do now?
Actually, it's a very small field. I know about 11 colleagues in the world today.
And are you all friends?
Kind of.
Do you know each other?
Not really.
Oh, that's what I wondered,
really.
Because you wouldn't be playing in the same place, would you?
Yeah.
I see. You played with an opera orchestra, or with an opera?
Yes, I was doing Porgy and Bess, where they utilized the harmonica in the production of Porgy and Bess.
Well, did they write that in then for you?
No, it was all written in. I mean, I did Summertime.
Well, that's perfect for that.
Yeah, and I did Porgy and Bess. I did quite a few background stuff. Jesus is Walking on the Water, which is the opening of Act 3 to Porgy and Bess.
When you started with the harmonica, did you always want to do it classically because there's blues and what a country music
There's
uses
country,
it?
blues. I immediately went in to do thematic themes,
Which
like
means?
movie themes,
Oh, movie themes.
which I
see.
really was interested in doing. And then I ended up, when I moved out here to Los Angeles, I started to work for MGM, and I was doing Little House on the Prairie.
So every week you were, did they?
Not every week, when it called for harmonica.
Oh, I see. So was the music written for that TV show?
Yes, there was.
I mean,
And
it was
then they wrote the
composed
harmonica
just for
part,
that,
yeah.
and then
And then the composer wrote in for harmonica.
I see. Well, with the orchestras in Germany and Canada and the United States that you've played with, do they differ? Are the orchestras differ? Does it seem like you have to take a different role at each place?
Not really. Most of the orchestras, studio orchestras, consist of 23 to 25 musicians, like they have here in Los Angeles.
So those are all the same?
All the same, yeah.
And then you're one of the 25?
I'm one of the 25.
I see, I see. Are the selections that you're going to play selected by the conductor?
Usually I select the pieces that I want to play
I see.
and discuss it with the conductor, and depending on the program.
Would you do like a solo show? Have you done that so
I've
that
done-
you're not with the orchestra?
Yeah, I mean, in my show I could do 2 solos without orchestra, without any accompaniment.
You can't, you do?
Yes, I do.
And how long can you play at one time?
I practice for hours, 4 to 5 hours.
You do?
Yes, I do.
And is there any kind of, do you do special breath exercises?
Just walking and not smoking, and
Good.
and just a lot of practice, you know.
And it's so amazing to see this little tiny instrument as like the solo part
Right.
of something. Tell me a little bit about this CD that you
Harmonica Holiday.
brought. Yeah.
I just recently made this. Edgar Struble, who produced it, was Kenny Rogers' ex-conductor, and he produced it for me. And it's a wonderful CD. I have Children of Sanchez on there, Wonderful World, kind of a mixed bag.
Is it all just your harmonica, or
Yes,
do you have
harmonica
a group
with
with
background.
you? You do have
Yeah,
a
there's
background with it,
background,
yeah.
yeah.
The only other instrument you could compare this to is a flute or a clarinet?
I use clarinet, muted trumpet. While I'm playing, I try to emulate different instruments when I'm playing. Either either a violin, flute, or a muted trumpet.
And it takes that sound?
Yes.
And do you change it during the
During
course
my
of a whole
performance,
peal?
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, it's so fantastic. I
Yeah.
can't wait to see the new West Pops.
Pops, yes.
Because you're playing with them.
Yeah, I'll be playing first at the Alex Theater on the 16th
The Alex Theater's in Glendale.
at
And then
7:30 in the evening, and then on the September 19th at the Colby Theater, Performing Arts in Thousand Oaks.
So Thousand Oaks, is it like a big music center out there?
Yes, it is.
Have you practiced and rehearsed
Never,
out there?
no. I will.
So how is it large like the Alex? The Alex has a pretty large
It's the
audience.
first time I'll be performing there, also at the Alex Theater.
They're going to be playing Broadway to Hollywood, which
right.
is what you love, Hollywood stuff. What is the program about?
I'm going to be doing a Henry Mancini medley with Steve Goldstein.
And tell us about Steve Goldstein, because he's the conductor.
He's the conductor and an incredible arranger. And so he arranged for harmonica. I'll be doing Moon River, Dear Heart, the Hot Jazz from Victor Victoria.
Oh, so you'll be doing a lot. And Lorna Luft is singing.
Yes, she is.
So it's a fantastic show.
Yeah.
And the new Pops with Mr. Goldstein.
Mr. Goldstein, yes.
Maestro Goldstein.
Maestro, yeah.
Is pretty new on the horizon for us. And we wanted to to succeed. So that's the reason we want you here, and we want to hear if you can play a little bit for us.
I'll do a little bit of Moon River.
Okay. Fantastic. Tell me about the hand movements. We didn't talk about that because I could hear the sound changing.
Well, actually the sound is controlled through my breathing. When I wanted to kind of have a mute sound, I'll close my hands, open, close.
I
There's
see.
a little difference there.
So you are controlling it with your hand as well.
And breathing.
And you're breathing.
Yeah.
Such a great tutorial today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with Micki Dickoff. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with filmmaker, social activist, Micki Dickoff, who has made documentaries and dramatic films dealing with such issues as AIDS, human rights, poverty, and the justice system. Her socially relevant films, which have been seen on PBS, Bravo, ABC, Lifetime, Court TV, the BBC, and many, many more, have garnered awards in a multitude of festivals from the Human Rights Organization and the Film Advisory Board. Her Emmy Award-winning documentary on AIDS, Too Little, Too Late, was the basis for an ABC Movie of the Week called Our Sons, which won a Peabody. Or you're from Boston, I should say Peabody. She graduated from the University of Florida, where she was honored recently as an outstanding alumna, and has taught film and TV production at Emerson College in Boston. Where do we start with such a distinguished career? I don't know, it's so relevant. Did the films make you an activist, or were you an activist to make films?
Well, it sort of happened all at once. You know, I went to school in the mid-'60s, and I went to the University of Florida in Gainesville, which is really the political hotbed of the South. And at that time, civil rights and the Vietnam War were the big issues. And I remember orchestrating the first sit-ins because there were 4 black students that went to that school, and they couldn't eat in the cafeteria, and I felt that was wrong.
There were only 4 in your school at the time?
At that time, but by the end of that year, those 4 people got to eat in the cafeteria. So
actually, the activism started first. You weren't making films then, were you?
No, I wasn't.
And what departments were you in? Because you got your master's there too.
Yeah, I got my undergraduate degree in theater directing, in political theater, and then in graduate school in film as the only woman in the directing program at the time.
Is that right? Were they prejudiced against you?
Well,
as far as women and men directors?
I think I was prejudiced against myself, you know.
Or against them?
Well, no, I always felt, can I do this technical stuff? You know, I was in a class with 40 people, 39 boys and me. I had a wonderful teacher, though, who saw something in me and encouraged me and would say things to me. I was pretty good for a girl, because he knew I would get upset at him, and it would make me try harder.
But that was great, wasn't it?
I credit him with keeping me going.
Motivated. Yeah. Did he know he was really motivating you?
He did.
Oh, good. That's good. So he was doing it in his subtle way.
He was. He knew exactly what he was doing.
So did you make a film before you got out of school?
I did. I made an anti-war film.
Your first film?
My first film in school was an anti-war film about the Vietnam War, and it won a prize. And it aired on the local PBS station, which was at the school, and they got all these irate phone calls, and I knew I had found my niche. Theater was wonderful, but I could only reach the people in the, that were in that audience that night. But television could reach the masses, and that's when I decided that I really wanted to create films.
So were you really thinking of television at the time, and not like the documentaries and the films that have been shown in drama, regular theaters?
Well, I was actually thinking both, but when I left school, I either could have come to California, to Los Angeles, or I could have gone to Boston, and I wanted to make films that had social significance. And I felt that if I went to Boston, I would have a better chance of doing it than in Hollywood, because I didn't feel I was a real Hollywood person. So I spent the early part of my career in Boston teaching and making documentaries.
Oh, is that where when you went to Emerson right away? You went
right from graduate
Florida,
school.
right to... Oh, you did go to Boston right away.
Right away.
Were you looking for material? Was that like part of your?
Well, I had a degree in film directing, so I wanted to go direct film.
I know, but what were you going to direct? Somebody else's work?
Well, I was at that point I would have done just about anything. Although I ultimately wanted to do my own work, but I applied for jobs at the local PBS station and things like, because I was young.
Yeah, and you were working, and so you wanted to work and do anything.
And do anything, and sort of climb that ladder.
But were you still looking for something? Were you looking for that, as you say, that sit-in type of thing that you could make all the time in Boston? Were you looking for things?
I passionately believe in the power of film to touch hearts, change attitudes, make a difference. And after that first little film I made in college and saw the response, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I always wanted to do that.
So you always were looking for a story. You did do a personal story, In the Blink of an Eye. What was that?
Well, this was an ABC television movie that's based on a true story about my best childhood friend who I hadn't seen in 30 years when I found out she and her husband were on death row in Florida. Now, this was fairly shocking to me, although I hadn't seen her since we were 12.
Since you were 12?
Yeah.
But how did you know? How did you remember who it was?
Well, when this happened, there was a lot of publicity about it. She and her husband were accused of murdering two policemen. It was a very high-profile, awful case.
Was it in Florida?
It was in Florida. I actually wrote her back then. I never heard from her again, and then I sort of went on my way. But in 1990, my mother read an article, my mother who lives in Florida, read an article about my friend Sonny's husband who was getting an execution date. And that put her back in my mind, and I wrote her a letter. I had no idea that letter was going to change both of our lives, which it did.
And you did the story, personal.
Well,
was it?
The first thing I did was get her out of prison. Making a film was sort of an afterthought.
But you're not a lawyer.
No, it was really good that I wasn't, because had I been a lawyer, I might not have tackled it, because her lawyers told me it was impossible to overturn her conviction, and that it was a 1 in 10,000 chance for her actually to get released. And I basically said, well, do you have anything for me to read? And they started to bring in boxes and boxes of material, and I methodically, for 2.5 years,
2.5 years?
Read everything I can, figured out what happened, realized she didn't do it, realized her husband, who they already executed, didn't do it.
They'd already executed him?
They did. And so I was determined to get her out of prison.
Oh, wow.
We did. And then, because she was this was back in 1992 when she got out of prison. She had been there 17 years. And there was such major publicity. And at that time, there weren't a lot of people getting off death row. It's certainly not women. And so Hollywood came forward and said, do you want to make a movie? I said, as long as I produce and direct it. And I was able to.
Did you go to Hollywood and tell them that you had this story?
Well, they came to me.
They did come to you.
Yeah.
How did they know you were so involved?
Because there was so much newspaper coverage and magazine coverage, Ms. Magazine, Good Housekeeping Magazine, all the newspapers.
After all the work you did, somebody got the bright idea, duh.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So
that was great.
It was an incredible experience, actually.
So that was a major thing. How did you decide, though, to make the work between documentaries and dramas? Because most of the dramas are activist issues too, aren't they?
Right,
But they have major stars in them.
they're very expensive to make.
Right.
I mean, documentaries are expensive too, but a narrative film, even a low-budget one like a TV movie's like $4 million, that's not chump change for me.
Right, right.
You know, so that I made several dramatic films, including the film Our Sons with Julie Andrews, Ann Margaret, and Hugh Grant, but it was very, very hard to get those projects off the ground. And I had 3 dramatic projects that fell apart one after the other, and it frustrated me so much, I decided that I would go back to documentary.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
But when you were making those, were they all movies of the week? Were they all for the networks or for dramatic release?
I did 1 film for dramatic release and 2 television films.
So the process, the research must be the same in a dramatic and a documentary. Is the writing the same?
Well, it's different because you have much more control in a drama. By the time you go shoot, every word is scripted for you, so you've done your work before you go.
Oh, you do have more control. I wouldn't think that way.
Much more control in a narrative film. In a documentary, you're there covering an event or covering a person or covering experience, and can only hope that you did enough research, that you picked the right people, and you asked the right questions to get your results.
When you start out to do a documentary, do you write the script? Or do you just go start interviewing people and then wait till the script unfolds itself?
I don't. I write a script.
You write a script.
It doesn't mean that I'm not flexible with the script. But I know what I'm doing before I go, because money is always an issue. And if you don't know what you're doing, you spend a lot more money.
You're wasting. You were in the AFI directing workshop for women, which is very selective and very prestigious. When did that come? What part of your career did that come?
Well, that actually was the catalyst for me leaving my teaching job and moving to Los Angeles. I had just gotten tenure at school, and it allowed me to take a sabbatical.
But Emerson is so great.
It's a good school.
Yeah, so many film people have come out of there, and TV people.
Including Norman Lear, yeah.
I didn't realize that you were there teaching, because there's a group of young people from LA who go to school back there.
I have students in this town that are making good money and working in film and television.
Yes,
so it's very rewarding.
And now you're here, and you're with those students. So you came to LA to do the AFI?
Yeah, that was in 1987.
Oh, wow.
It was a long time ago. And I had just won this Emmy for this documentary, Too Little Too Late. And I wanted to develop a narrative script based on that film, and the AFI allowed me to develop that. It was a film called Mother, Mother, starring Piper Laurie, Polly Bergen. Henry Mancini did the score. And what was really unique and wonderful about that film is everybody in Hollywood worked for free.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. And the story was Mother, what was the story?
It's called Mother, Mother, and it was virtually a story about 2 mothers with gay sons who handled their relationship with their children very differently.
I see. You talked about your friend being on death row. You have another really heavy-duty film called Neshoba. Tell us about that.
Well, this film was sort of 40 years in the making for me, because I was 17 in 1964, which makes me 63 years old. And I wanted to go to Mississippi to register black voters during Freedom Summer. And my father, who grew up in a small town in Mississippi, in the only Jewish family in that town, wouldn't let me go.
Was he afraid?
He was scared to death, because he knew what he experienced so much prejudice and so much fear when he was growing up. He just didn't want me. He didn't want to take the risk.
So this is the name of the city.
It's the name of the county. Neshoba is the name of the county where these kids were murdered. And then 6 weeks later, when Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, their bodies were found, and there was an enormous amount of press at the time, it haunted me my whole life, because it could have been me. I was only a few years younger than these kids, and really shaped my politics and my art. I didn't know that in 1999, 35 years later, I would get a phone call from Ben Cheney, who was the younger brother of the black man who was murdered. The middle man, and he said, I said, how are you calling me? How do you know me? He said, we have a mutual friend. I said, well, what did this mutual friend say? And she said, you're a really good filmmaker and you work for free. And I said, well, at least one of those things is true. What did you have in mind? And at that point, in 1999, all the killers were still alive. And we had started to develop a film through the eyes of Ben Chaney, worked for 6 months on the script, flew a crew to Mississippi from New York. I flew in from LA, and Ben didn't show up, and the film went on the back burner.
Oh my gosh. So then what happened?
Then I got really close to Carolyn Goodman in 1999 and to Ben's family. And as those years went on and I saw these mamas getting older, in 2004 Carolyn was 88 years old.
Oh, that's how you came about.
Mrs. Chaney was 83, and they wanted some measure of justice, some sense of justice, that their kids' lives were worth something.
Good for them.
And so we decided we would start this film at the 40th anniversary, thinking we were making a film that was going to get these guys indicted. But we shot for 10 months, and then something happened.
Oh, it was 10 months, and you were in that city.
Shooting actually a group of black and white people who for the first time in that city got together to talk about this case and call for justice. And so that sort of was going to be the through line of the film. And then because of what they did, the state of Mississippi indicted the ringleader, the mastermind of that crime in January of 2005, a Baptist preacher named Edgar Ray Killen.
Wow.
And this is a man who people try to interview, journalists, filmmakers, news people for 40 years. He never talked to anyone.
And he was still at his church for 40 years?
He was an itinerant.
But I mean, he was still there.
He's still a good Christian.
He was
with the Ten Commandments sitting in front of his house.
Wow, and you know, some of the clips from the film where people don't even want to talk to you, or they go like, they deserved it, or things like that are just like shocking in this day. They don't even have they didn't know everything about it.
Exactly. But the real coup was, of course, getting Edgar Ray Killen convinced to tell his story to us, and we spent 5 months with him.
Wow.
And
so he thought you were on his side, telling his story, probably, right?
Well, we certainly didn't lie to him. You know, we said, you've never told the truth of your story. Well, he has an ego that's so big
that he wanted to tell.
And because he got indicted.
Oh,
there was this little window of opportunity, and he gave us total access to it.
Oh, how long is the film?
87 minutes.
And how long did it take for you to edit it?
Took 2 years to edit.
It did?
It took 6.5 years to get it finished and released.
Oh.
We actually finished a rough cut in September of 2008, but could only afford, there's a lot of archival footage and period music in the film.
I was going to ask about the research and the music.
And it cost an enormous amount of money. We could only pay for film festival rights. We needed another $150,000 in order to get the film released, and we went on the film festival circuit because Barack Obama was running for president.
Oh, so then you had a black president.
Well, he was running at the time.
He was running, but you had a black president,
exactly.
You had a black person who was murdered, and you had a film that wasn't really out yet, but it was on the festival circuit.
It took us 2 years to raise that last bit of money. And we were very lucky, and we got distributed.
I know, and it's showing in New York and Los Angeles and everywhere else. But did it make a difference that Obama was president?
Well, I think it only made a difference in the sense that these 3 boys wouldn't have been killed, except for the fact they were worried about some black man being president. You know, so our legacy is really our heritage, and Barack Obama too, because he stands on the shoulders of these 3 kids. But it's very important to understand in this film, the only reason you know about this case is 2 of the kids were white. And because there was a very famous movie made in 1988 called Mississippi Burning, so people have some sense and knowledge of the case, except that was a wonderful fictionalized, highly fictionalized movie that really didn't address the truth of the matter.
So we can see the truth, and we can also see what happened when they fictionalize something or fantasize it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm really happy to have met you and had you here today. Keep writing. Email jaquinn1@aol.com and 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. See you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.